Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at the expansion panel widget, which allows you to create collapsible and expandable content in your application. You'll notice our homepage state contains a scaffold with an app bar, and what we're going to do first of all is create a list of color expansion panels. You can see here I've got a color expansion panel class which contains a color and an isExpanded property. What we're going to do is map each one of the material primary colors to a color expansion panel. So what we're going to do is say final color expansion panels equals colors.primaries.map, and we're going to return a color expansion panel. Update that to yield color, like so. And inside the color expansion panel, we're going to specify a color of color, like so. And then finally calling .toList, like so. You'll notice that is essentially a list of color expansion panels representing each one of the material primary colors, converting each one of those primary colors into one of our color expansion panels. What we can do now, in the body of the homepage state's scaffold, we can create a single child scroll view, like so. And the child of the single child scroll view is going to be an expansion panel list, like so. Now the expansion panel list takes in a list of children, which are a list of expansion panels. It provides an expansion callback function, an animation duration for the animation of the expanding and collapsing, and finally an expanded header padding. What we do, first of all, is create our list of expansion panel children. So what we're going to do is take each one of our color expansion panels and map these into an expansion panel. So what we can do is specify that as color expansion panel, like so. And inside here we can return an expansion panel, like so. And we just convert that to a list at the end. Now you'll notice by these squiggles there in our IDE that the parameter body is required and the parameter header builder is required. We'll start off with the header builder parameter, which allows you to build a header for the expansion panel. You'll notice it provides us with a build context and a boolean of whether or not this specific expansion panel is expanded or not. So as we saw there, we have a context and we have a boolean of whether or not the expansion panel is expanded. And inside here, we can return a list tile, like so. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we will just insert a placeholder title. And we'll pop that into a text widget, like so. You'll notice that the parameter body is also required. The parameter body allows you to specify the expansion panel's content, the body, if you like, of the expansion panel. In this case, we will simply create a container, and we will give the container a color of the color expansion panel dot color, which will be one of these material primary colors set up here at the top of the state class. And we will give it a fixed height of 100, like so. You'll notice we also have the isExpanded parameter, which controls whether or not the expansion panel is expanded. Much like we've used the color property of the color expansion panel class, we can use the color expansion panel isExpanded property, which defaults to false However, we'll have a look at updating that value to true and false a little bit later on. You'll notice, last but not least, you have this can tap on header property. This is false by default, which means that you can only tap on the expansion panel icon button to toggle the expansion panel to be expanded and collapsed. Specifying can tap on header as true means that you can tap on not only the icon but also on this header builder widget to collapse and expand the expansion panel. We'll have a look at that functionality shortly. Now that we've got the children in the expansion panel list, we can create the logic for the expansion callback function. The expansion callback function is called every time the state of the expansion panel list changes, whenever the user taps on one of the expansion panel icons, or the header if the can tap on header is specified as true. So what we do is specify the expansion callback, which provides us with the index of the expansion panel that's been tapped on, and whether or not the expansion panel is currently expanded. Inside here, we can call setState, and we can update the isExpanded property of our color expansion panel objects inside the color expansion panels list. So what we can do is specify color expansion panels list, get the expansion panel at the index that the user has tapped, and we can specify isExpanded to be isExpanded, like so. If we now save this, you'll notice we have an expansion panel for each of the material primary colors, like so. However, you'll notice when I tap on the expansion panel icon, nothing happens. That's because this index here, in this case, is 0 for the first expansion panel, and isExpanded is false because this expansion panel is currently not expanded. This means that we're simply specifying color expansion panels of the current index dot isExpanded equals false repeatedly, which, as you saw, will keep the expansion panel collapsed and will never expand it. In order to toggle the expansion panel between the expanded and collapsed state, you can simply inverse the isExpanded parameter there in the callback function, and this means that when it's collapsed and we tap the button, it will be expanded, and when it's expanded and we tap the button, it will become collapsed, like so. You'll notice that you can have multiple expansion panels open at the same time. If you would like only one expansion panel to be able to be opened at one time, then you can use the expansion panel radio, which we'll cover in another episode. Essentially, you can see there how we have a single expansion panel for each one of the material primary colors, like so. We'll take a look now at the can tap on header parameter of the expansion panel. Can tap on header is false by default, and this means that tapping on the header will do nothing. The only way to expand and collapse the expansion panels is to tap on the appropriate icon, like so. However, if we set can tap on header to true, you'll notice that we can tap anywhere inside the expansion panel, either on the icon or on the widget returned from the header builder, in this case, our list tile widget. Removing can tap on header reverts it back to its default value of false, meaning that we can only by default tap on the expand and collapse icon on the right hand side. You'll notice how the expansion panel list also allows you to control the animation duration of the expansion and collapse animations, and also the padding applied to the expanded header. Essentially then, the expansion panel allows you to create a list of expansion panels which can be expanded and collapsed, like so, and using the expansion panel widget rather than the expansion panel radio widget allows you to have multiple expansion panels expanded at any one time. Therefore, if you want to have multiple expansion panels open at any one time, then you should use the expansion panel and not the expansion panel radio. Essentially then, this is showing you how you can have a list of expansion panels that can be expanded and collapsed at the user's leisure. I hope you found this episode useful. Thank you very much for watching.